Those of you who are here today are observing an absolutely historic event. The soldiers that you see before you represent not the past, but rather the future. It is through exercises such as this that truly we can create a new world order.
We see the emergence of the New World Order, named by Mikhail Gorbachev and George Bush, and embodied by the United Nations.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
My fellow citizens, today we celebrate the mystery of American renewal. This ceremony is held in the depth of winter. But by the words we speak and the faces we show the world, we force the spring. A spring reborn in the world's oldest democracy that brings forth the vision and courage to reinvent America. When our founders boldly declared America's independence to the world and our purposes to the Almighty, they knew that America, to endure, would have to change. Communications and commerce are global. Investment is mobile. Technology is almost magical. And ambition for a better life is now universal. Profound and powerful forces are shaking and remaking our world. And the urgent question of our time is whether we can make change our friend and not our enemy. Thomas Jefferson believed that to preserve the very foundations of our nation, we would need dramatic change from time to time. Well, my fellow Americans, this is our time. Let us embrace it.
Washington Journal continues.
And now on your screen is Linda Robinson, whose most recent book is called 100 Victories, Special Ops, and the Future of American Warfare. Linda Robinson, what are the Special Operations Forces?
The Special Operations Forces in the United States are actually a large group of 33,000 uniformed special ops from all the services. So you have Marines, which are the newest to come into the Special Ops community, Navy, Air Force, and Army. And so we have, the Army is 50% of the uniformed Special Ops guys. The Navy SEALs, of course, are very famous, but they are one of the smaller components. With their boat crewmen, they comprise 9,000. The Army also includes Rangers, which are about 3,500. So they're very well known, but a small segment.
So 33,000 uniformed men and women.
Yes.
What kind of operations do they conduct?
Well, that is also a surprise to most people because the range of operations is very wide. Most people associate them with the direct action commando missions, jumping out of helicopters in the dead of night, like the Bin Laden raid. And of course, that is very much part of their skill set. But they also have a whole range of missions that they do with other forces, with other populations. And that's what my book really tends to go into, a lot of those other missions where they're working out in 70 to 80 countries a year. So most people don't realize how widely spread they are. They go out in small numbers, and many of these forces go out in a blended capacity. You can have some SEALs out there together with the Green Berets, which are the Army ground forces, and some civil affairs and PSYOP soldiers. So they often tend to work in these blended packages, but very rarely in large numbers. And of course, I don't want to neglect the Air Force Special Ops because they will often just send one combat controller out with an A team, a Special Forces A team, or a SEALs team. And so that one Air Force guy is charged with calling in the direct fire or just maintaining their communications with the unmanned aerial vehicles overhead that provide them great visibility of what's going on. Because some of these missions, they won't actually fire a shot. They'll be working with their partner forces that are engaging in the combat, but they will still always have the ability to call in fire to protect themselves if need be, but very much relying these days on the unmanned aerial vehicles overhead, predators armed or unarmed, to provide them that situational awareness and keep them safe. And the reason that's so critical is they are out there often in very dangerous areas in small numbers. So people often ask, well, how can they survive? You know, they have a big toolkit. They also have a lot of tactics, techniques, and procedures that keep them safe. Where I spent most of my time with them in Afghanistan, they would be the only U.S. military around for miles and miles. So they had to have the ability to protect themselves. They'd be living one team in a small, in a kalat, a mud-walled compound, and really they would rely on the villagers also to develop a human source network to help keep them alerted to any threats that were coming their way.
And just to go back, Linda Robinson, you said they not only do the dramatic jumping out of the helicopters, rescuing, taking out bin Laden, et cetera, the things that we're all familiar with, but some of their other activities, would it be fair to say they involve themselves in nation-building activities?
Well, I think that if they are finding the willpower in that community to solve their own security threats. If you allow me, I mean, the title 100 Victories is a little bit of an ironic title. It's drawn from Sun Tzu, and if people don't read the quote in its entirety inside, it says the acme of skill is not to win 100 victories in 100 battles, but rather to subdue the enemy without fighting. And I took that title for the book because it really means these guys are expert at finding ways to accomplish the end without them fighting. Now, often they will go into these areas and there'll be a big battle, like the cover picture has a team that is out there in Paktika, very dangerous area of Afghanistan. And the team that went in first had to fight a horrific battle in the very place where that photo was taken. But then after they fought that battle, they found a local ally named Commander Aziz, and they successively pacified the entire province, going through the populated corridor from the border, a place called Shkin, all the way up to the capital. They persuaded the villagers to reach these written agreements that they were going to defend their own villages. They built 14, they called them OPs, observation posts, along this highway. And at that time, there was really no commerce. The Taliban really had free reign of this province. And so gradually, these villagers, and these weren't military people, these were just ordinary citizens that came out and volunteered for these self-defense groups. And this pacified one of the most troublesome areas. There were a few other U.S. conventional troops there throughout the length of the war, but this really turned the tide. So it's really finding those leaders within a population that have the courage, and they give them a little bit of training. They give them some military training, but it's less really about making them into, special ops Jedi Knights, but more about finding their courage, giving them just enough skill to defend their villages against the threat. In this case, the Taliban, although some of those Taliban elements were very linked into the Al-Qaeda network and Al-Qaeda affiliates, because this is smack up against the border with Pakistan. So that's kind of the magic and the trick of this, is how they get in and find the right partners. And that's one of the big lessons that I think is transferable from this long saga they went through in Afghanistan, that regular civilians can be a huge force multiplier. And if you think of areas like Yemen, very tribal population, the writ of the government doesn't extend outside the capital city. Or let's say North Mali, the Tuareg tribes, they don't really want to be governed by the African forces that are based in the south there. So this idea of having local defense as a stepping stone to a broader security solution is very transferable. And it's one of the 4 or 5 lessons that I think can be, and we are seeing already, being applied elsewhere.
Well, we're going to continue our conversation with Linda Robinson. 100 Victories is the name of the book. Special Ops in the Future of American Warfare is the subtitle. But first, we want to introduce you to Special Forces Commander William McCraven. talking about his view of special forces.
What I am trying to do as part of this vision is to change the narrative about who we are as Special Operations Forces. Everybody has seen the movie, and that's important, but at the end of the day, it's about building partner capacity so that nations can deal with their own problems, so that we can help them deal with their own problems. But you can't get there unless you can begin to build the trust factor. So as we put people out in these various countries, and I talked about us being in 78 countries around the world, we have people that speak the language, that are culturally attuned. It is a very small footprint, so you don't have a large force that is imposing itself upon the country. We work hand in hand with the U.S. mission, the embassy there. And I will state this for the record as many times as I can. We do not do anything, nothing, that doesn't have the approval of the chief of mission, of the ambassador that's there. We don't do anything that doesn't have the approval of the geographic combatant commander. So these are two important concepts. So as we go forward to build partner capacity, to build the trust, to build the network, it is all done in concert with the country team and the embassy.
Linda Robinson.
You heard him. He's, I think, very emphatic about this, using others or partnering with others to solve the threats. And I think that, you know, we've been through this incredibly longest period of war in our country's history. And there's a tendency, I think, for people to just want to shut all that out and say, never again, we don't want to get out there. And what this is this is an option between, you know, 100,000 plus U.S. troops going somewhere and doing nothing. And I'm not saying it should be applied everywhere, but it is an option. I mean, I go back again to the cover of the book. That's one team that pacified an entire province with the willing support of Afghans. And I mentioned, you know, the civil defense, I think, is really huge. It's very important because it's a way to really get a community mobilized. But they also go out and they will train special ops forces so that they can deal with those higher end threats. And they also did this in the case of Afghanistan. They probably built the largest and most diverse and self-sustaining special ops command that they ever have. This one has an air wing, so they can be air mobile, very important in a country like Afghanistan with that terrain. They have ranger-like forces, special forces, commandos. So it's a very articulated force with this command and with the ability to train and select their own members. So it's not, the idea is this is going to be a permanent solution for Afghanistan. They've done that in Colombia, they've done that in other places. The other thing that I think is very important that is part of Admiral McRaven's vision is this global soft network. And what that means is coalition. Our friends and allies around the world have their own special ops forces. They're willing to come together with our special ops forces and partner to do some of these things. In Afghanistan, very few people realize there were 24 countries' special ops units in there, and they took on doing provincial response companies, which were kind of high-end police units for each province, as well as an elite Ministry of Interior force. And we have units like the British, the Norwegians, a lot of European countries, Croatian, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Lithuania, Romania. All of these countries were willing to send out some of their special operators to help do this work. So that begins creating a very powerful worldwide network to be able to go in and potentially lead some of these efforts, such as France and Mali. We don't always have to be in the forefront to do this.